Hi, it's Bryony here. Just wanted to share a little story that you may not be familiar with that is going to be published in a magazine soon. And I don't want to share it with you to convince you of anything. I'm not in the business of convincing anybody of how to live their life or how to show up. I think each one of us knows that way innately. We just obviously need support and guidance and a map to be able to find our way to that pulsation point. Back when my mother died of cervical cancer, she died of renal failure, which was a derivative of cervical cancer. She was 42 at the time. And cervical cancer has no predisposition, no hereditary disposition at all. The thing is that my grandmother, her mother, died in her 40s at around the same age as my mother, 42, and she had cervical cancer at the time of her death. Again, no hereditary predisposition. When my mother died, this information came to light about my maternal grandmother, who I didn't have a very close relationship with. And when that information came to light, I knew innately in my system that there was something that was coming down my matrilineal lineage. There was something being passed through the cellular structure, epigenetics, energetic, emotional, body, through the generation that was happening with the women in my line. The common denominator here was the fact that my mother and myself had experience of childhood sexual abuse. And I can't confirm, though story indicates that my grandmother as well. So what came about, which I found really extraordinary at the time, is after the death of my mother, not long after that, I had this kind of strange menstrual cycle, and just one strange menstrual cycle. And I went to a doctor. I went to a female doctor. I asked for a pap smear. I wasn't due for a pap smear, but I just had this feeling in my body that something was not right. And I went to the doctor, who was my mother's doctor at the time of her death, believing that she would give me a pap smear because of what had just happened to my mother. But she would not. I sat in the office quite determined, always been quite determined, and I argued. I argued with her. And she eventually submitted and said, I will give you a pap smear. That pap smear came back as having abnormal cells in my cervix, which then led to me having a SYN3 loop incision not long after that to remove those cells. And since then, I've gone on to have 5 children successfully, no issues at all. In those events, what I saw really clearly was there was something happening in my matrilineal lineage that needed to be cleared and needed to be healed. And I do know that another family member close to my mother has also had an abnormal pap smear as well, and had abnormal cells that had to be medically dealt with. I knew that the discrepancy in the family line of cervical cancer was prevalent and it needed to be healed. And this is what I set about doing. The second thing I set about doing is making sure that I reach beyond the age of 42, which I have, and I did in a big celebratory fashion, that I reached beyond 42, the age of my mother when she died, and my grandmother as well when she died. And that it was super important because my mother did not listen to her body. It was super important for me to, after the death of my mother, to really get connected and understanding and communicating with my body and following the impulses of my body, taking care of my body, responding to my body, responding to any kind of discrepancies in the body, emotionally, energetically, physically, all of it. And so that intuitive sense has something that I've been building and built on since that experience. Probably even before that too, I had this really clear, innate sense of my environment and my body and my connection to spirit long before my mother died. This is probably predating me even being brought into the world. I just had this really deep connection with spirit and deep connection with my body, and just had this kind of way of seeing the world that I still cannot explain to this very day, except that it served me very, very well and has guided me out of some really sticky and difficult situations, and has just grown in its capacity to be able to decipher, read energy, see things, predict the future, if you will, and navigate really sticky and difficult situations in and around health, family, belonging, and this kind of innate sense of who we are, and this intuitive sense of who we are, which I do now, which I do clinically now. What I understand from this situation was that my own role, my own experience was not just mine, that so many people are navigating this, and to have that connection with the body and to be able to have that knowledge and to be able to learn and grow and understand not just your lineage, but also your body, how it interconnects, your family relationships, what all those components are physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, all coming in together, that we have the power to be able to make a huge difference and to change the trajectory of where we're at and where we're heading and what has been passed down to us. And in my own experience, in my own lineage, it was really important to me that I cleared that in my own mother line. I cleared that for my children ongoing. And I still do that. It's not a once-off event. It is an ongoing tending to and healing from. And I wanted to share this with you because it is quite pivotal and an extraordinary part of my story that I do tell and I do share, but I haven't shared directly with you and my online community. But a lot of the work that I do now in the clinic space, and the mother wound work that I do, and the somatic work that I do, and embodiment work and energy work that I do communally, collectively, and in the familial space and individually, was birthed from this incident, was birthed from seeing this manifest, if you would like to use that word, see this, how this moved in my own life, in my own personal story, and how I moved with it, and how it became something that didn't define me, but something that really shaped me and who I am today, and how I show up in the world, and how I mother, and how I woman, and how I really believe innately in the gifts, in the resources, in the innateness, in the healing capacity of the human, of the body. When we take a multifaceted approach, not just one level, but all the layers in, and we're guided and supported on that journey. And so I've had a lot of other experiences in the medical field in and around what this way of working has created, for not just for me, but for other people that I care about as well, and the impacts of that, and the amazing innate way in which a human body can heal and can be navigated and guided through a passageway and through a pathway of healing. I'm not saying this, it will be correct for everybody. I'm just sharing my story, and I'm sharing it from a lived experience of what I did for myself, for my lineage, and what I now do in the clinic space with others who come to me who want to heal and want to grow and want to connect with this part of themselves and life and living, and harness the innate power and the innate guidance that is here all the time, pulsating all the time, just waiting for us to turn towards, drop into, kneel at, listen, work with, collaborate with, reciprocate, and trust. So if this is something that I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if this is something that you want to work with, then reach out to me. I'm not in the business, as I said, of convincing anybody of anything. And if this is not something from you, please move on, scroll on. But this particular experience has changed the trajectory of who I am, how I show up, of my whole way of interacting with the world. And it was quite magical to experience and to watch it unfold and to be part of that.